So I'm delighted to say joining us once again on the We Are West Ham podcast is talkSPORT's Jake Watson, huge Leicester fan as well. Of course, Jake, lovely to have you with us again. Wonderful to see your new flat for the first time. Obviously not in person, but just see it behind you. How's things going, mate? Your club are in dire straits. You haven't played Newcastle yet at time of recording. However, when people listen to this, you may have done. So you've currently got 2 games left in the Premier League and you're on 30 points. And ultimately, you need at least 3 more to overcome Everton. Your goal difference is better than Everton and Leeds is. It's all a bit messy at the moment, isn't it? Talk to me.
Well, hopefully people will be listening to this the day after Leicester have just beat Newcastle by a 1-0. Ideally, Will, like scoring nice and early on and then just doing a Newcastle shithouse and then just waste time for 85 minutes and win 1-0. But no, I think the likely
what are the chances?
Is why you've recorded incredibly slim to the point that it's just not going to happen. So I would highly expect that we lose quite heavily to Newcastle this evening, if I'm completely honest. And then we head into the final game of the season against you guys. I mean, look, I say, could it be worse? I mean, the only way it could be worse if our goal difference was shit. But luckily, it's pretty good. So, irrespective of what happens against Newcastle, it all still goes down to the final day. But issue being is that Leeds are playing a Spurs side who have just completely stopped playing. Everton are playing Bournemouth, who are very much safe. So West Ham we play, and I have to say I was a little bit surprised about how on it and how good you guys were against Leeds.
Me too.
The other weekend, I mean, incredibly thankful that you beat them. But yeah, I think that the common perception was that you were going to kind of use so much energy and effort and focus on that Europa Conference League game that you weren't going to be too asked about the back end of the Premier League. But no, you guys played well, and we've known for a long time that this game was going to be the last one. Of course, when we'll be looking about the relegation picture. And in my head, the hope was always that by the time we played you guys, you were safe and you had Europa Conference League, so we could hopefully play you when you're not, desperate for a result. So
when we don't care, Jake, is the word you're looking
not
for,
the worst
because honestly, we really don't.
Well, yeah, I know, but I mean, in a weird way, sometimes that can work in your favour. When the pressure's completely off.
Yeah.
It can go one of two ways. But no, you're right. I know it's a pretty decent situation at home against a team with nothing to play for. So yeah.
What's happened then? What's gone wrong? I know, obviously,
how long we got?
Well, yeah, we've got a while, but I know people are aware that your spending was a little bit hampered. You got a high wage bill. I saw one of your tweets the other day that was quite interesting about the grim state of affairs as far as your wages go and your finances go. But what's give us doesn't have to be too brief, but in your thoughts, what is it? Where have you got to this stage?
I mean, honestly, mate, it is quite difficult to summarise, other than saying pretty much everything has gone wrong. I've supported obviously this football club my entire life, and we've had some pretty rubbish teams. So the point being is I'm quite numb to Leicester not being very good. Do you know what I mean?
Right? Yeah.
Obviously, it bothers me, but it doesn't really change anything. So you kind of don't go overboard. I've seen this play in 3 different leagues, and I think we've seen us get relegated 5 in the next couple of weeks. But I mean, it feels to me that after the FA Cup win, that everyone who ran the football club and then basically stopped doing anything, and then that big almighty truck, which was right at the top of the mountain, and been slowly rolling down without anyone realising, and now it's picked up so much speed, nobody can do anything about it to stop it. The recruitment, as you said, was non-existent in the summer. You can go back to last season in the FA Cup, and it's quite a pivotal one. It seems like that was the real moment. We got knocked out by Nottingham Forest, who at the time were a championship side. And we hadn't played them, I think, in about 10 years. For the fan base, it was a massive, massive game. And we got absolutely battered. And Brendan Rodgers came out afterward and said, look, I think this team needs a complete refresh. And he basically challenged and questioned the mentality of lots of the players. And, again, I'm aware it's difficult to summarise, but then for the rest of the season, most of those players then thought they were leaving. It then got to the summer. Brendan had been spending the entire rest of that campaign scouting and looking for new players and planning what the next season was going to be. Got to the summer, and then it got like halfway through the summer, and then the owner turned around and said, no, you haven't got any money. And then they didn't accept any bids for the fringe players who he wanted out. So he had an entire group of players who didn't really want to be there because they thought they were going. And then the ones we wanted to get rid of, we couldn't get rid of. Kasper Schmeichel. And then we had the Wesley Fofana debacle, which was just a few days before the start of the season as well. And they never really replaced him. So literally from the off, it's been a nightmare. And it's just honestly gone from bad to worse, to the point that I don't really think a single one of those players wants to be at the football club at the moment. And yeah, we'll see tonight. I'm aware that we're speaking ahead of Newcastle, so I can say this. I mean, the club's two best players, Barnes and Maddison, are being dropped this evening. They're on the bench. And when you consider we've got 2 games left and we can still survive, that probably paints you a very decent picture, or gives you an idea of what a complete horror show it must be at the moment at the training ground and during the week. So yeah, I know it's a very long answer, and I could give you so much more, but it's basically, mate, a complete and utter mess.
Yeah. I mean, no, we like detail on the podcast, Jake. It's just an odd situation. I think everyone goes, we won the Premier League. How's it got to this? It's a fair statement to make. I know it was a 1 in a million achievement that you had there, but there was some deliberacy behind it. You had some absolutely brilliant players who you developed. You had Vardy at his peak, Riyad Mahrez, of course. We'd see what he's gone on to do, and it just seems odd. Obviously, the tragic death of your owner would have shaken everyone up at the club. Top's taken over since. It's easy, fans often blame the owners for the club's demise. Yeah. Leicester and their ownership, and your ownership with the family who own Leicester City, has been revered and the envy of many a football fan up and down the nation for years. Is it? Yeah. Is Top to blame? Is it a variety of things, variety of people at the club? Or you mentioned momentum there, and I think that's such an important power in football, both good and bad. And I think it's very difficult to arrest. And lots of the time, as you've seen with Leicester, changing the manager often seems like the only way to arrest the slide. It hasn't really seemed to have done that. I know it's a bit of a droll way of looking at it, or a bit simplistic maybe, but is it one person's fault? Is it Top's fault? Is it everyone at the club? Is it Brendan? Is it the players? Is it someone, or just a mix, or just, who's responsible, I guess?
Yeah, no.
Is it yours?
It's definitely not mine. But pretty much then everyone else is at the football club. Look, it's always the way, isn't it? There's not like one particular scapegoat here, but everyone has absolutely played a role in it. And the ownership one's an interesting one because, there is huge affection for the family and there is huge affection for Top, but we also have to recognise that he isn't the guy who made the billions of pounds for King Power. He wasn't the one that bought the football club, and he wasn't the chairman, when we won the Premier League. He inherited the football club from his late father. So in terms of like business acumen and running football clubs, hasn't really got that much experience. And it's difficult to say and know, isn't it? Because you're not there and you don't hear and see what he does on a day-to-day basis. Now, there's no doubt in my mind his heart's in the right place, and he's funded this as good as what he can. I mean, there was earlier in the season he put another £200 million in to wipe the debts, so his commitment is there. But I got a sneaking suspicion he isn't that good at running football clubs. I think his biggest problem has been that he's shown too much loyalty to our sporting director, and then also with Brendan Rodgers.
Who's that again?
It's a guy called John Rudkin. And again, he has come in for a lot of criticism, and rightly so, in the fact that, we've got half the squad out of contract this summer. Players like Tielemans and Soyuncu are going to go on free transfers. Why on earth that was never sorted out? So you've got 8 players going out of contract this summer. You've got another 8 next summer. So obviously no players that we want to keep are going to sign new contract in the summer, are they? So whatever situation we're in now, we're going to be in the exact same situation next season. The contracts that have been negotiated are huge and on crazy money. And again, he'll be the man responsible for doing those negotiations. And then as far as
was that off the back of Jake, though, a lot of those off the back of your Premier League win? And when you were good, you obviously won the FA Cup as well. Like, it's been a bit of a drastic drop off a cliff, it seems.
Yeah, no, there was a guy who was head of recruitment called Eduardo Macia, and he left. And then since then John Rudkin was there, Brendan Rodgers came in. And again, this was a problem that we gave Brendan too much power over the football club. And once Macia left, he brought in his own guy, a guy called Lee Congerton. And Celtic fans will tell you he didn't have a great track record there. This was the guy who was at Sunderland when Jack Rodwell had that contract. And again, his track record at Leicester is just not good at all. So I think as an owner, Top gave Brendan Rodgers too much power and too much influence. He brought in too many of his own people who weren't very good. The sporting director, John Rudkin, has said, he's the guy responsible for these contracts. And, if you've got a group of players who are all out of contract, they don't want to be there, or they're trying to leave, or they're on huge salaries, that is the sporting director. That's or the director of football. That's not making someone a scapegoat. So I think the owner's been too loyal, been a bit naive. I think the director of football really shouldn't still be there. And I think Brendan Rodgers should have been sacked 10 months earlier. And I think, those are the three people which have to take the brunt of the responsibility. Yeah,
it's all sort of seemed very nice at Leicester, isn't it? The last few years, everyone's nice to each other. Everyone likes each other. It's a real feel-good factor around the club. And, and that is great, isn't it? But for successful football clubs, you need a bit of a ruthless streak as well, isn't it? I mean, deciding when and where to get rid of managers in particular is also always tricky. And I was advocating for holding on to Moyes this season. There's never a right or wrong answer. It's always easier in hindsight, isn't it? But yeah, certainly the players one, as far as your squad goes, that just seems like it's pretty clear mismanagement of a squad. Yeah,
absolutely.
And particularly the contractual situation.
Just
and you're in financial trouble. Tielemans is your main asset. You could have cashed in last summer.
Exactly.
I know you did on Fofana, but obviously that didn't seem to have helped.
But they should have sold Wesley Fofana, Will. They sold him a week before the close of the transfer window. They received £5 million up front from Chelsea for him. And then they replaced him without Fez. They'd just given him a brand new contract, and we were under no obligation to sell him. You saw with Brighton with Moses Caicedo. I mean, you guys with Declan Rice, you can just turn around and say, "I'm sorry, Wesley, you're not going. You can go next year." And and that's what they should have done. And then they negotiated a terrible deal. You could understand if they received a huge amount of money, which they then reinvested back into the squad, but they received hardly any of it, and then they invested hardly any of it back into the team. So again, that was a massive mess up from the football club. You lose your club captain, you lose your best defender, on the eve of a new season. You don't buy a goalkeeper, you don't have another captain, you don't buy a decent centre half, and you were poor defensively previously, and you lacked leaders previously. Then what on earth do you expect to happen? Basically from the start of the season, if you remember that start for us, it was the worst start in Premier League history. No team conceded more goals in the first 6 or 7 games than what we did. And Brendan did turn it around, you felt, a couple of times, but the reality is that he'd lost control, and he was only ever a couple of games away from the next kind of conversations and scrutiny around his job. But I don't know, with Brendan Rodgers, it's a weird one, because you mentioned obviously sticking with David Moyes. And you've stuck with David Moyes, you stayed up. Nottingham Forest stayed with Steve Cooper, and they stayed up. And we've had conversations about this previously. I'm sure of it, that, I've pointed at pretty much every Premier League club that have made changes this year. And I think probably other than Everton, they're all going to end the season with worse managers than what they started. Because there's such a dearth. I mean, I
would include you in that, to be honest.
Of course. And, whilst I think I don't want to kind of be hypocritical here, because I've already mentioned that Brendan Rodgers should have been sacked 10 months earlier. But the point is that when we did finally act, we acted with 8 games left.
We should have kept hold of him for 10 months longer.
But by the time they did sack him, it's too late. Dean Smith can't, or no manager can do anything at that point. And what manager is going to come in who's worth his weight or any kind of real quality at that stage of the season? So, I mean, I wonder if they should have just kept him until the end of the season and whether because honestly, we were playing better football under Brendan.
Yeah.
We genuinely were. Now, this isn't Dean Smith's fault. He's just obviously inherited a mess. But yeah, I do wonder that we perhaps, I don't know. It's because it is such a difficult one, but I think we were a little bit better under Brendan. I really do. Not by much, but
so no. So, obviously we're talking before the Newcastle game. Newcastle away, not easy. West Ham at home, slightly easier. But I think just purely off the strength of the games that Everton and Leeds have got, I think Everton beat Bournemouth at home on the last day of the season. I honestly think that. And so have you, what I was going to say was, obviously it's difficult to tell for the Newcastle game. Have you sort of resigned yourself to a season in the Championship yet? Or are you holding on to a glimmer of hope still?
No, I have very much resigned. And
how does that feel?
Well, I know this will surprise some people, but I actually want to get relegated. I do. And people don't believe me. It's like, no, you don't. It's like, yes, I do. I do really want us to get relegated. The club is a mess from top to bottom. I mean, the only thing is that financially it may cause some serious problems, but I'm not. Yeah,
well, you're not go down again.
Yeah, I'm not the one
League One fodder again.
Yeah, so it's quite easy for me to say that from a purely football perspective, Will, I would rather go back down to the Championship because the club needs a purge from top to bottom, and the only way that happens is if you get relegated. Because we see it all the time, don't we? When teams struggle and then they save themselves on the last day. All that happens, it just delays the inevitable. And then the exact same
crap again next year, like Leeds and Everton.
We genuinely need to buy ballpark around 15 players this summer, and we need a new manager. What Premier League club is going to be able to bring in a brand new manager and get 15 new players in and get enough of them right to be better than what they are right now? When you bear in mind that we're going to be losing Tielemans, Maddison, Barnes, how on earth are Leicester going to replace those three? Plus, find it do you know what I mean? I think that the club just need to wipe the slate clean, start again, and then not hope for the best, but hopefully it's better next season. But no, you are right, because it can go one of two ways, can't it? It can be the perfect reset. So, for instance, when we went down to League One, that acted as the perfect reset. We got Nigel Pearson in, and then he obviously kick-started everything that you've seen over the last decade. But then equally, you could see it go the other way and end up back down in League One or just in the Championship. I think the comparison is probably Stoke.
Wrexham away in 2 seasons' time.
I mean, maybe. But I think the comparison for me is Stoke, that they had a huge squad on overinflated wages, some bad eggs in that squad, your Berrahinos, etc. And that financially really crippled them for years. And they kept trying to spend money to then get back out of the Championship. And it feels that, a few years on, they've still never really managed to recover and wipe the slate properly clean. So, hopefully we go down and do a Burnley, get a new young manager in, an exciting one, young team, start again, and you bounce straight back. Or it's a Stoke or a Sunderland or a Wolves. I don't know. But I do genuinely want to get relegated. Yeah. I want to get relegated. It's like the end of a relationship now where it's the end. You love my analogies. It's the end.
I do,
yeah. But you're not allowed to do it just yet. So this is this awkward period. And it's also then be a bit crap when you finally get the news. But longer term,
I love it. I love how you said when you get the news. As in, it's always someone telling you that the relationship's over. Yeah.
But then eventually,
never you handing the news out.
Yeah, but it will be better longer term. I genuinely believe that. So yeah, I'm resigned to it. I'm okay with it.
Is it one of them? I still think any football fan outside of Liverpool, Chelsea, and Arsenal, and Man United would swap with you and take a Premier League win. Is it easier to sort of, and an FA Cup win, to be fair? That's not to be sneezed at. I think because you won the Premier League a few years before, people sort of underestimate what a monumental achievement winning the FA Cup is as well. I think, and we're just sorting out tickets to Prague and hotels in Prague and stuff, and I'm so excited, more than anything. And that, if we win that and then go down in 4 or 5 years' time, I feel like it would be far easier to be sort of okay with, because you've been at the pinnacle, you've been at the summit of what it is to be a football fan. So it's almost like, look, everything else after winning the Premier League for Leicester is just a bonus. Like, so if you go down, so be it. It's like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean. And look,
Because it's never going to get better for you in your life, is it? Let's be
no,
honest.
no, it's not. But that's also equally not a reason why we should be
Football,
okay with.
relationship-wise.
Yeah, but for everything you have said, that is also not a reason why we should be okay with relegation. Like my feelings towards getting relegated is but it's completely separate to that. I want us getting relegated because I want this group of players gone and I want some other people gone. But the point is that I am someone who always champions trophies over anything else. And if West Ham win the Europa Conference League, they will have had a more successful season than Arsenal. They will. Whether other people want to accept or not, that is 100% true. Pound for pound, Leicester have to be the most entertaining football club in the country over the last 30 years. Barring League Two and the Johnstone's Paint Trophy, I've seen us win every single domestic trophy. I've seen us play in 3 different leagues. I've seen us play in 3 different European competitions. Like, I've seen it all, and you have to understand that a league that you play in is fluid. You can go up, you can go down, it doesn't matter. The great thing about football is it doesn't just end. If we get relegated, we're not forever in the Championship. You just can get promoted again. But if you win the League Cup, the Europa Conference League, you have that forever. And that's the difference. And that is the difference, as a fan base, we've been relegated. We know what it feels like, and I think for maybe a club like Everton, because they've never been relegated from the Premier League, it would feel like the end of the world to them. But it's not. Yeah, sure. Obviously it's not ideal, particularly financially. But, in 5 or so many years' time, we won't be talking about this season as a fan base. We'll be talking about all those things that we've won, the cup finals, if we win the champion. Do you know what I mean? Those are the things you talk about, and those are the important things. So, no, you are right that we are fortunate that I've seen it, I've done it, we've won it all. And, we, over the last decade, we've won the Premier League more recently than Man United, won the FA Cup more recently than half of these teams. I think this millennium, there's only 5 teams who have won all the domestic trophies. Again, little old Leicester are one of them. So, I am able to sit here and say, well, it's fine. I'm sure at some point Leicester will bounce back. There'll probably be a few shit years in between, but that's part and parcel of being a Leicester fan.
Yeah. Well, look, Jake, there is a football game on Sunday, whether you go down or not, whether it will mean that you can stay up when you play West Ham at home on the weekend. How do you see the game playing out? Obviously, a lot of it depends on how you get on at Newcastle tonight. But how do you see the game playing out, really?
It's so.
Are there any of your good players can be allowed to play?
Yeah, but that, genuinely, it's almost impossible to predict, in the sense of what we've seen from this group of players all year is one that doesn't really appear to give too much of a crap what happens. They look so mentally fragile or disinterested. I can't really work out which one it is. And the fragilities of this side over the last couple of years has been in the games when it's really mattered. In the run-ins for the top 4, or in some of the cup games. And I just feel that Leicester needing to win is not a good thing, in the fact that we're not very good when we need to do something. Equally, at the same time, if we're leading, say for instance, we beat Newcastle and a draw is enough to step. I don't know. I just don't trust this team whatsoever, Will, in any real scenario to get a result. Our record from winning positions is horrific. It's not good from losing positions either.
Or drawing.
Yeah, we're just not very good at football. I'm obviously going to the game, and I'm fully expecting for that to be a relegation kind of game, because even if we do somehow get a result, the pressure's off, and we finally decide to start playing 37 and a half games into the season. It's all too little, too late. So I honestly, I just want the season to be over. I really do. If I could click my fingers now, and then it's just, Leicester went down 30 points, whatever. We'll have a few weeks holiday and we go again. That's my ideal scenario. It really is.
Yeah, no, I feel you, mate. I feel you. Obviously, in one of the worst seasons in your club's history, you still managed to beat West Ham 2-0 away in November when we were having a bit of a stint as well. I don't know. It's a really bizarre one. I just feel, I said before.
How close is this game for your final?
So the final's on the 7th of June.
Right. So you've got plenty of time then. So it's not like, you're playing a few days later, so you're going to play a rested team. You've got a full week or 10 days.
It's one of those, yeah. It's a real poser for me because it's the 28th of May is our game against you. And then, you've got the Conference League final on June the 7th. I don't really know what to make of it, to be honest, because it's one of them you sort of got to keep the players sharp.
Yeah, but you'd be kicking yourself if Declan Rice gets injured in a
well, that's the thing. I can't see him playing. I can't see him playing. I can't see Antonio playing. And maybe Naif Aguerd. Everyone else, and Jared Bowen, I'd hate to see him get injured. He is mustard. He's come back into form again. Played well at the weekend. I think I'd like to see Rice nowhere near it, Bowen nowhere near it, Antonio nowhere near it.
Same.
And probably one of the first choice defenders rested. Like Fabianski don't play in the Europa League anyway, the Conference League anyway. Areola plays, so they're like your core players. It's one of them. If Kufau gets injured, you've got Ben Johnson to go in. It's not the end of the world. If Cresswell gets injured, you got Emerson to go in. It's not the end of the world. Yeah. Declan Rice gets injured, it's Thomas Souček and Flynn Downs. If Michael Antonio gets injured, it's Danny Ings, who a good player but not suited to that system. So if Jared Bowen gets injured, it's Ben Rama and Fornals. They're our key cogs for whom there's no replacement. So I don't really want to see them getting any minutes, but then you've got to keep them sharp. I don't know. It's a difficult one to balance, really. But saying before the Leeds game, I said one of those games we'll lose. I think it will be the Leicester game, but I just think you'll go down because I think Everton will beat Bournemouth. Basically, exactly. That's how I think it will go. I wouldn't be surprised if you win 2-0 because we're all just, no one wants to get injured and not really that bothered. But I think Leicester, Everton beat Bournemouth. Then you go down anyway. But look, Jake, it's been absolutely brilliant. I know you've got a game against Newcastle tonight. It doesn't sound like you're holding on to much hope for that game, nor the game against us, nor staying in the Premier League at all. I do feel for you, but I've been where you've been, but I also think, you support Leicester, your team won the Premier League. So happy days. Sooner support Leicester than Tottenham, Arsenal. Anyone like that has had far more success in the last few years than either of those clubs. So, I hope it goes all right, mate, but because I like getting you on the podcast. But if you have to have a season off, then so be it. What do you think the score will be then? Give us a Newcastle score prediction and then West Ham as well.
I think Newcastle will beat us by at least 3. No, I really do. Yeah. And then I think you're right. I think that Leicester might beat West Ham by a couple. I think it might be 2-0, just because you will literally not play because no one wants to get injured. It'll be a much changed team. And, say for instance, the pressure's off Leicester. I think we'll end up losing to Newcastle badly, beating you guys, but still going down. That's my prediction for the next week or so.
Yeah, fair enough, mate. Fair enough. Well, I'm extremely excited about the Conference League final. Just quickly before we let you go, you had an experience of the Conference League yourself, didn't you? You lost to Roma, the eventual winners in the semis.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. It was like the time of our lives, and we absolutely loved it. And again, we've had Champions League, we've had Europa League for a few years, we've had Europa Conference League, and that's the only thing. When I talk about relegation, it's the only thing I'm going to miss about being in the Premier League is the opportunity to play European football. European football at whatever level is the best thing in the world. Being part of a football club, when you're part of a fan base which goes home and away, with your mates, and it's your life. Being able to go on those European trips, it's the best thing. I couldn't care less if there was a 4th or 5th tier of European competition. Yeah. It would still feel like the best thing in the world. But we were really fortunate. That we had some great games and some great clubs. We played Rennes, we played PSV Eindhoven, then we played Roma. The only not a criticism, but the only thing I'd say of your run this year in the Conference League was it hasn't really had the same level of glamour and European heritage as what maybe ours did. But of course, then we didn't make the final. We lost by a goal.
We beat Ghent.
Well, yes, you did. No, but you know what I mean. Getting to the final and playing Fiorentina, that's a massive deal. That's a great European team to be playing in a final. But no, some of my best memories as a Leicester fan, even though last season wasn't a particularly good one either, was those European trips. And I mentioned this on talkSPORT the other week as a massive frustration of the amount of kind of love and focus that West Ham have got this year in the Conference League. Double page spreads about you making a European final. And no one seemed to give a crap when we were doing it. I felt like I spent my whole life trying to convince people that it was a real competition. We're calling it this, that, and the other. And I was like, no, this is brilliant. It's a great competition. If you're not Real Madrid, if you're not Man City, there's not many opportunities to win a European Cup. There's got to be something for everyone else. And this Conference League is generally one of the best inventions that UEFA have come up with in years, because it gives everyone else an opportunity to play in Europe and to win something. It's brilliant. And I love, obviously, that the West Ham have enjoyed and have been as successful as what they have done. And obviously, of course, I do generally hope you win it. It's going to be the biggest thing that I missed, that Leicester now feel a long way away from ever playing back in European football. God knows when it'll be back again, if ever.
Yeah, I feel you, mate. I feel you. I think a lot of people listening will be able to relate to those feelings. We do support clubs where we always seem, just a smidgen away from doing something iconic, and also a smidgen away from complete disaster. But it will surprise you regarding your comment about double page spreads. I think, mate, there are a few more West Ham fans in senior positions on sports desks in Fleet Street than there are on Leicester, unfortunately, which might explain why the Conference League's been handed up so much. But look, Jake, it's been brilliant having you on the show again. Good luck for the rest of the season. I do hope you stay up, to be quite honest with you. I know what you're saying about hope you go down, but if it's a choice between Everton, Big Sam Allardyce, or Leicester, I actually quite like going down, then I do hope Leicester stay up. I don't think you will, unfortunately, but hope it all goes all right. If you do stay up, we'll see you next season. If not, I'll see you anyway.
See you when I see you.
It might be a couple of years' time. But look, Jake Watson there from talkSPORT and one of the co-hosts of the Big Strong Leicester Boys podcast, speaking about